Good morning, everyone. My name is Priyanka, and I'm very happy to be here talking to you all about the topic that we all really like, storytelling. I've been a big fan of storytelling my entire life, listening to them, reading them, making them up. My dad loves to tell this earliest memory of me where I would just stretch a teeny tiny story and add all the random objects around me to make it seem interesting. And that has kind of worked well for me. I have little kids, and one of my favorite ways of bonding with them is through storytelling. And actually, Brendan said that I started my product marketing journey as a competitive analyst. I started my professional career as an embedded systems engineer, writing code, and actually literally use stories to make my way into marketing and connecting the dots. Still a little squeaky. But actually, storytelling has always been a huge part, but 6 months ago or something, I started learning more leaning more into the mechanics of storytelling, the practical aspects of storytelling. And this session is actually compilation of all of that research, and first of many more to come, hopefully. So when I started my presentation, I actually had a bunch of slides on why storytelling is important. So like a good marketer, I did a research, and this was a survey that I shared on the PMS Slack channel and other groups that I'm on, and 52 of you responded, yay. And as you can see that storytelling is still quite relevant. So I removed all of those why storytelling is important slides, because we all think that it's important, it's relevant, and we all kind of have the same challenges with storytelling. Where to start, or another challenge was lack of frameworks or templates, and another one was just not finding the right stories to tell. All of that is extremely relevant. So in the next 20 minutes or so, we're going to dive into all of these challenges, and hopefully you'll learn a new template and take away some insights that you can go back to your work and start implementing. Also, it was very interesting that most of the people said that they were B2B. I don't agree with that. I think maybe the B2B people just had more pressing needs of storytelling. Let's just say that. Are there any B2C folks here? Just show of hands. Okay, a few of you. Great. So I said that I removed all the why storytelling is important slides. I lied. I kept one. This. I think this is the best validation of why storytelling is important. It literally lights up our brain. So at Princeton University, they did a study and they tested people's brain waves and did fMRI scans, the functional and MRI scans. And they told people facts and then stories. And different areas of the brains actually lit up when people heard stories. And even further, as people got engrossed in those stories, their brain waves matched with that of the storyteller. At UC Davis, they did another study where they found out that hippocampus, which is kind of here, is a brain storyteller. And every time you hear a new story, it finds your own memories and relates to those stories. That's why different stories impact different people in a different way. So this slide is my way of telling you that it's very important, is that's how we capture people's attention, bake new information into their heads, and get the emotional reaction that we are craving for. Stories are literally in our biology. As it turns out that it's by far the most powerful way you can instill new ideas or put new ideas into the world. It helped our ancestors find food, keep away from danger. It helped our elders pass on the important history to us, and it helps marketers like us connect with our audiences and like sell better software because B2B. And creating good stories is not a rocket science, which is the great news. It's literally this. It's the engineer in me trying to find formulas in pretty much everything. It's literally this. You need a solid purpose. You need good understanding of your audiences. And by good understanding, I mean you need to know what their purpose is so that you can match it with your story's purpose. You need to understand the risk and opportunities that they are into and the emotions you want to cover in the stories. And at the end of it, we're all marketers, solid call to action. That's all. Literally, that's all there is. But what sets good stories apart from bad stories is the hook. So what is the hook? All good stories are about change. If you could remember one thing from this whole presentation, make it this. Nothing good happens in the status quo. Nothing good happens in the business as usual. Nothing good happens in the comfort zone. So good stories are about that change, that transformation, that metamorphosis, that reinvention, and that's what we want to uncover when we're telling good stories. And change is scary, it's ambiguous, but it's also exciting. And it's up to us as marketers to highlight those emotions and take those parts out. So when I think about storytelling, or when I say the word storytelling, what is the one main framework that comes to all of your mind? I see some smiles. I think you know what I'm talking about. Okay, I'm going to give a hint. It's the same thing that is common between Harry and Ted and Nemo and Frodo and Katniss and Miguel and Very Hungry Caterpillar and Wall-E, pretty much every Pixar movie, and of course, Neo. It's the hero's journey, right? For those of you who are familiar with it, amazing. Hero's journey, or monomyth, was something that was discussed in a book called A Hero with Thousand Faces, written by Joseph Campbell in the 40s, 1948, I guess. And he basically studied plots of thousands of different movies and books and mythological stories to figure out that it's all the same pattern. Depending on which research you find, you'll see that there are always 9 to 18 steps of the hero's journey. The hero always takes the same step. It always starts at 12 o'clock. Our hero gets a call to action. You're a wizard, Harry. Or like, don't touch the boat, Nemo. Who will remember that, right? Or take this ring to Mordor. So our hero gets a call to action, and then he sets on the journey. He finds a mentor, a guide, Gandalf, Dumbledore kind of guy, Yoda, Obi-Wan. And then from there, he crosses the threshold. He goes from the known world, the comfort zone, to the uncomfortable world. And that's where the fun starts. And through trial and error, hits and misses, wins and losses, the hero is learning new things, growing. At some point there, it's not shown in this picture, but you'll see in other frameworks, he finds the goddess. It could be a real goddess or metaphorical goddess, like in Lord of the Rings, the OG, they meet Galadriel. So things like that. They see the goddess, which is basically a path forward, a light. Think of this as Harry learning about Horcruxes. Okay, I have the path, this is what I need to do. And then they learn, and they prepare, and they get ready to go against their biggest enemy, Sauron, Voldemort type of stuff. And that's when, at the meanest battle, the hero almost dies, right? Almost. But what we've learned from Hollywood or Bollywood, if it's not the happy ending, the story is not over yet, right? So our hero comes out, of course, fights and comes out of the battle stronger, wiser, and with some outwardly gifts. And then our hero thinks inwards. Whether should I keep those gifts or return them? And that's when Harry breaks that Elder Wand, or Frodo throws that ring in the Mordor, the fire, and then on a happier note, if you've seen Coco from Pixar, Miguel starts loving his musical interest even more, or starts acknowledging his family. So there are different ways of using those gifts. And that's all there is to hero's journey. As I said, there are 9 to 18 steps, and you could dive deep into it. It just works. Because the story has so many ups and downs, emotional roller coasters. Just think of all of these stories. In case of Ted Lasso, every season is a little hero's journey, and we're just going through the whole thing again. It's been working for many, many years, thousands of years, and it's still going to work. But the biggest thing I hear from marketers about the hero's journey is, this is cool, how do I apply to my product, right? Oops. So that's our template 1. This is how it's going to be, the format of our session. We'll introduce a template, we'll talk about it, we'll see some examples. I think the hero's journey just works for your founder brand, for your customer stories, for your own pitch or sales decks. This is my attempt of doing hero's journey for B2B. It's of course heroes and heroines journey because 2022. The story is slightly different though. It all starts with a call to action, but there are some external triggers that are happening. Macro trends, an external trigger, your competitor doing something is changing in your market, something is changing geopolitically, and that's when our hero embarks on a journey. Think about a common case study example that you've seen. There's a problem, there's a solution, and there's outcome. Joe's Donut Shop had lots of cost for their marketing. They used a product for marketing automation. They saved a lot of money. Good for Joe, but that's not exciting, right? That's why we need to go into the uncomfortable part of it, the opportunity part of it. Most of B2B stories stay in that top part, in the comfort zone. And if you remember anything from the one slide we're supposed to remember is nothing good happens in the comfort zone, right? So the B2B stories need to actually go into the uncomfortable world and show us the rest of the journey. How did our hero get the buy-in? How did our hero figure out the people process technology? Who was the mentor? And if you're wondering, like your product or your company is the Gandalf and Dumbledore in this case, how did you actually help them get through their journey? What were the challenges? Was there a pit of despair at some point? Was there an MVP that failed? Or was there a big challenge that they encountered? How did they pivot? How did they come out of it? And what did they learn from the early success? How did they scale up? What were the best practices that they can share with the world? And that's why the hero's journey is slightly different from the B2C or like the regular story narrative hero's journey is because we're spending a lot of time here talking about real world challenges. And the best part about this template is you can dial the wheel the way you want. We are not writing a novel when you're doing B2B storytelling, right? So you can double click into each of these stages and you can make that a whole story. If your product is all about figuring out the change management process of B2B buying cycles, zoom in into that. Make that a whole story. And you don't even have to capture this whole thing through one customer story. We can create different customer stories, short bite-sized pieces, and stitch them together to tell the whole big picture. This just works because this is the framework that people are comfortable with. They can instantly understand what you're talking about, and they can relate to the emotions that you're talking about. The change management, the getting the buy-in, the uncomfortableness of all of it. So let's see a few examples of companies who are doing it well. The first one is from Intercom. I think their marketing is class A. This is a screenshot from their customer stories page. Please go and check. I'm going to be showing a lot of examples. We don't have time to go through all of those, but please go and check those out. The reason I like this story is it's about Atlassian, a small team, a support team in Atlassian, doing a lot more than they were supposed to with a very small team of 10 people. So the story here, the hero's journey here is pushing the boundaries of what a small team can do, and the hero is the support rep. It's not the whole company, it's the support rep. And it's done so beautifully, and if you look at this story in the context of all the stories on Intercom's page, you can stitch it together, and you can see the bigger story of how Intercom helps all of these different companies across different stages. The next one is closer to home. I work for AWS. This is an AWS example. AWS helping F1 change the status quo. I mean, F1, Formula 1 is the best of the best, right? But they still want to be better than who they are. So they're literally challenging themselves by adding AI and machine learning and getting real stats of the races. And this story is about the hero's journey of the brand and company. It's a 2-minute video, very cinematic. It's available on YouTube. And the third one is very close to my heart. There's this company called Divergent. Hello? Which hires neurodiverse people who are on the autism spectrum or with Asperger's, and get them jobs as AI labelers. So if you know about AI labeling, it's a very monotonous job and it needs extreme attention to detail. And the people on the spectrum or neurodiverse people are perfect for that. And this video is on their homepage, and it talks about the founder's journey. And the hero in this case are these neurodiverse people, the employees. It's beautiful. So there are so many different ways of doing hero's journey, and we could spend an entire hour talking about it. But let's move on. That's our template number 2, the golden circles. And I think it works for many, many different reasons, for messaging, for making budget asks. Again, storytelling is not just about telling customer stories, right? It's basically doing better marketing at everything that we do. So this works for new projects, strategic narratives, or even onboarding new employees, just getting them on your mission. We all know this. This is Simon Sinek's Start with Why. I'm not going to explain it because you all have seen the TED Talk, you all have read the book. But there are so many easy ways of implementing them in their day-to-day. So this is an example of my awesome handwriting doing the Simon Sinek golden circles. I just drew it as like a megaphone. I worked for a conversational AI company which automated customer care tasks and saved companies a lot of money. Our why was customer experience is important, agents are expensive and not scalable, and we need to somehow fix it. Our how was an automated solution that can do that at scale and let your agents be free to focus on things that are more important, need human expertise, etc. And our what was the actual conversational AI product. You can add another layer to it, why us? And that's when you talk about your differentiators. And this little diagram and the strategic narrative that came out of it became the single source of truth for pretty much everything we did. The content that we produced, the web copy that we wrote, the sales presentations that we made. And eventually we were also able to create different flavors of this for different industries, and we spun out different industry solutions. So this definitely works. And this is my go-to. I use this framework for pretty much everything. This is my favorite example of the golden circles too. One, because it's vintage. And two, because we all can relate to this. This is the first investor's deck from Dropbox. See how simple it is. Is the why, the how, the what, and why us? Look at that picture of the team. It's as simple as that. Going back to the big companies' investor pitches will tell you that it all comes down to the golden circles. And they do that because it works. When you get, the power of golden circles is when you get somebody bought on your why, it's very easy to convince them on the why and the how. And that's how humans naturally connect. So this is another very good storytelling template that just works perfect for B2B. The third one is Old Way, New Way. I think this works wonderfully for websites, for messaging decks, for competitive selling, and strategic narratives. Think of this as like those before and after weight loss pictures. I mean, those are magical. You don't have to say anything else, right? The way it works, because all storytelling is about change. Remember the one slide we're not going to forget? All storytelling is about change. We are changing from the small and limited old way to a limitless new future. From slow and expensive to better, faster, cheaper. From incremental short-term thinking to big, scalable, game-changing, paradigm-shifting. You all know the copywriting words. So this just works because in one visual or slide or narrative, you can tell people that they are going against a better future. They're going to a better future. They're going against the status quo. And the best thing about this is you don't even have to compare yourself to any other product. You literally are comparing your product, your company, to the status quo. And a lot of companies do this very effectively, but one of my favorites, and you must have seen it, is Drift. This used to be on their web, homepage. I don't know if it's still there. But they built this net new category called conversational marketing by showing this old way and new way. Old way of doing marketing, very traditional, conversational marketing, fast. Look at the smiley face, it's happy. And it just worked. And of course, they had an amazing marketing engine behind it, but the new category creation put them in a completely different bucket from all of their competitors. They created their own category and they won in it by just doing this old way, new way. And if you're interested in doing more of this old way, new way narrative, there's this person called Andy Raskin. Definitely follow him on LinkedIn. His entire business is helping companies doing strategic narratives, and his hand-drawn whiteboard screenshots are better than any marketing class. I think old way, new way works because, again, think about those weight loss pictures. They do something in us. They trigger such emotions that we can relate to, and we all want a better future. It's all about the change. Another good example, so I tried, I don't know why the animation is not working, but I tried very best to stay away from Amazon and AWS examples. But this 1997 shareholders letter from Jeff Bezos is amazing. If you haven't read it, go back and read it. I've highlighted certain parts where He does a great job of showing old way and new way. He talks about what got us here is not going to get us to the future. We need to go big, we need to take risks, which was very different. Like AWS and Amazon takes a lot of pride in our failures. We are not shy talking about the products that didn't work, the campaigns that didn't work, and this came out in this letter. So it's another form of telling about old way and new way and getting people rallied up on the same mission. And then another example is from Google, which is very recent, and it's one of my favorite campaigns that I've seen lately, and it follows me around because, of course, I'm clicking on it. There's no place like Chrome. And it does a great job of stretching that campaign across B2B and B2C. The B2C campaign has lots of fun, quirky videos of people navigating Chrome and just learning new functions of Chrome. And the B2B one is centered towards IT people. And each of those styles does one thing. They tell you one thing, but collectively they tell a bigger story. And they basically tell you that whatever browser that you're using is the old way. This is the new way. There's no place like Chrome. It's just a beautiful campaign. If you haven't checked out, please check it out, but it's going to follow you everywhere you go. So. And the next template that I'm going to talk about is apple versus orchards. So we are in New England. There are lots of amazing apple orchards around us. So imagine that you own an orchard. You have the best apples in the tri-state area, imagining. And you want to convince your out-of-state friend that your orchard is the real deal. You have two different ways of convincing them. You can tell them about the breed of the plants, the age of the plants, the pH level of the water, what fertilizers you use, how you prune it, right? All of those characteristics of the orchard. Or you can just give them an apple to try. And they take a bite, the perfect Granny Smith, and they're like, oh, okay, now I get it. Your apples are the best of the best. So that's what we're trying to show. It's like show versus tell, right? Give them the apple and not the specifications of the orchard. And it's very difficult in B2B because we take so much pride in our stats, right? 3%, like 3 seconds response time and 11 nines of, I'm getting a lot of giggles. We do that a lot at AWS as well because of course the stats are amazing. But still, you have to find a way of showing people rather than telling people how your product is awesome and telling that story. So just like other templates, we have a few good examples. My animation is not working, so I'm just going to do this. The first one is immersive. The first picture is AWS Deep Racer. How many of you know what Deep Racer is? Oh, wow, okay, I'm excited. I get to tell you what it is. So it's a very teeny tiny race car, 1/18th of a scale of a race car. And there's actually a Deep Racer League that happens at different conferences or at our customers' locations. And teams get to race it. And the way you race it is by writing reinforcement learning codes. And reinforcement learning is actually you're not telling the car what to do, you're just telling them what is the right way and what is the wrong way. Just like how you tell the kids, right? You don't tell them don't do it, but just guide them around it. And it's a fantastic way of learning about machine learning by immersing yourself into the whole experience. We do that a lot at schools and colleges, and you should just see those kids' eyes light up. They don't even know that they're learning machine learning. They just know that they're racing the car. And they come out of it learning these extremely complex concepts, which if you learn on the books, seem pretty boring. Another example of immersive experience I have here is actually from the Van Gogh experience. I put that there because we all can relate to it, but I don't know how many of you caught the immersive experience at Museum of Science. I think it was a few months back. It was an immersive experience of the pandemic and how they invented the pandemic drugs. It was pretty small compared to the Van Gogh exhibits. You could just walk around, take a few turns, and it showed you everything from the start of the pandemic, how things unfolded, and how the vaccines were created, the whole drug development, and what it actually took to bring the vaccines to you. By the end of it, if you're not convinced that this is amazing, you're missing something. So there are so many practical ways of doing these immersive experiences. Of course, those are expensive because, again, you're literally putting a show together. There's other part of it is letting people live through the immersive experiences vicariously. I'm going to take a sip of water. The example on the top right is a series, another AWS example called Now Go Build, is where our CTO Vernon Vogels goes to all the parts of the world and talks to AWS builders on how they're building with AWS technology. It's very cinematic, very much like Anthony Bourdain, and it's done in such a way that you can actually connect to the builders. The other example is from Google, AI Group. Every episode, and that's on YouTube, every episode focuses on a concept of AI machine learning and takes you through some startup examples, and you actually talk through the video. You actually get to hear the builders who are building it, the startup founders, their challenges, etc. So both of those are very cinematic, of course, very high cost, but they have done a great job of actually making you feel that you're relating to the audience, right? And then the third example is probably my favorite, and of course it didn't cost as much as the other ones, is a newspaper cutout from a few weeks ago. So I don't know if you all know, but Days of Our Lives is not on NBC anymore. It's on Peacock. Okay. It's on Peacock. It's only available on streaming. So this was the simple news, right? A lot of news outlets covered it. This awesome reporter went one step ahead, and he found this amazing grandmother and granddaughter duo who connected on Days of Our Lives all these years. And when the granddaughter heard that it's going on streaming, she's like, oh, my grandma doesn't know how the streaming works. She doesn't even have the login, etc. So she flew from one city to another city to help her grandmother set everything up. And on the first day, watch that streamed episode together. It's a huge change in her grandma's day-to-day life because she loves that show. And her entire world is changed because it's not one click away, but it's like a few steps into the streaming network. And there was a little QR code where you can click and listen to their stories in their own voices. It was a whole thing. I spent half an afternoon on that. But it's such a beautiful way of telling your audiences what to feel. And I'm going to remember that for a long time. I haven't seen a single episode of Days of Our Lives, but I'm going to remember that story. So that's what good stories do to you. They make you remember stuff, even the stuff that you don't care about. And then the emotional part, the awe feeling, right? I think we got a lot of that awe thing from the grandma story. The first one is, I'm a Mac, I'm a PC ad. Who all know about that? Yeah, classic. Amazing. If you all haven't seen it, go to YouTube. There are a lot of these. It all started with Apple taking digs at Microsoft for being like too buttoned up and you're not cool enough for us. And then it ran for years and years and years. Eventually, they partnered, and there was an ad where they introduced the Office suite for Mac. So when the stories are good, they have the long shelf life. Because again, it's in our biology, we connect to them. And then you can morph them over the years. You don't need to know the whole game plan. They can just morph over the years. It keeps coming. And then the second example is AWS Curiosity Kid videos. I've used examples of videos, but that doesn't mean that videos are the only ways of storytelling, right? Because videos are easy to connect, it's easy to tell, and then you can go back and watch those, that's why. But the second one is AWS Curiosity Kid ads. They're everywhere. It's looking at technology through a lens of a kid. Like my mom still doesn't know what I do. I work on AI and machine learning tools. But I sent her a link of the Curiosity Kid ad, and there's this 6-year-old looking at her mother's sonograph, like ultrasound, and she's like, oh, I don't know how we're able to see the baby. AWS is how. And then my mom is like, oh, so all of those companies run on your company. I'm like, yeah. So that's the thing. Stories do a good job of connecting with people who may not understand what you do at a superficial level. And there is this series of ads, lots of awe factor, lots of emotion in those ads, where we're looking at technology through a kid's lens, through that curious, big, wide eyes. And at the end of the story, it's a minute-long video each. At the end of the story, you're like, oh, all of these awesome stories are connected by AWS because all of these companies run on AWS. I think that's a brilliant, beautiful example of storytelling. And if you're wondering how to capture emotions, this is an oldie but goodie. It's an old HBR article about the elements of value. the more values you hit, or the higher up you go, the more connected you are to your audiences. Have you met anybody who does CrossFit? They'll tell you in the first 3 seconds of meeting you. Why? Because they're bought in on all of this. Anybody who went to Harvard, same thing, right? They bought on all of these things. So what you need to do is identify the elements of value that you want to capture in your audiences, that you want to trigger when you're telling the story, and the more you hit, or the higher you go on the pyramid, the more connected you'll be. And we are almost at the end of the presentation. I couldn't leave you with the resources, lots of great resources. I'm going to be here for questions if you want to dig deeper into those. Not all of them are books. Humans of Cinema is actually an Instagram account. It's awesome. Go check it out. And thank you.